I welcome you all. Psychologs magazine presents Utsaah, mental health event. Let's make it a reality. Psychologs is India's first print-based magazine on mental health. It is an initiative and effort towards reaching out to people, educating them about the importance of mental health, various issues related to mental health, and how it can be improved. Throughout the month of October, we will be spreading awareness on importance of mental health by conducting various speaker sessions on different topics.
Mental disorder can affect women and men differently. मेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स जो है वो वुमेन को और मेन को काफ़ी डिफरेंटली इफेक्ट कर सकते हैं एंड मेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स जैसे कि डिप्रेशन एंड एंजाइटी वुमेन्स में काफ़ी कॉमन होता है एंड देयर इज ऑल्सो सर्टेन टाइप्स ऑफ डिसऑर्डर दैट आर यूनिक टू वुमेन ओनली जो सिर्फ और सिर्फ वुमेन को ही इफेक्ट करते हैं. For example, some women may experience symptoms of mental disorder at times of hormonal changes, such as prenatal depression, premenstrual depression, and premenopause-related depression. Also, women also faces postpartum depression as well. So, women have been 50% of the population experiencing different fears, which affects their psychological well-being. In today's session, we have Dr. Manisha Agarwal, who is a professor at Banaras Hindu University, who will be sharing her views and opinions on the topic impact of fear on psychological well-being of women in different sections of the society. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so shall I begin?
Yes,
ma'am.
Myself, Professor Manisha Agarwal in the Department of Psychology at Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. And I was asked by the editors to conduct a session on mental health, for which I felt that being a lady and having gone through several problems and dark phases also, I should talk about it, because even though there are mental disorders that are more prominent, there is something that is common across all sections of society, and it is there in nearly all categories of women. And this is something which is not a topic on which I have done any research as such, but something which I feel should be highlighted since it concerns all women. And by women, I don't mean the grown-up women, I mean the girl child, I mean the teenager, and across different phases of lifespan. So fear is something that is a common phenomena across different sections of women and at different lifespans. So, phases of lifespan. So, I think this is something that needs to be discussed openly. Because we feel that being afraid is something that is acceptable for women. And why it should be acceptable for women and not acceptable for men is something that should be debated. Now, if you look at the present circumstances and during this pandemic, lot of discussion has been going on regarding the mental problems that women have faced, that men have faced, that different categories of the society has faced. So maybe this is one of the reasons why mental health has become so highlighted and so prominent among discussions among psychologists. And people in general are also becoming aware that they might need help. Now, if we take this as one phase or one um, time duration where mental health has gained significance, then we should also concentrate on the feeling of fear that has prevailed all during this time. During the last nearly 2 years now, our whole society and globally, we have been existing in a state of fear. Fear of the pandemic, fear of COVID-19, fear of um, what is going to happen to the economy, fear of what is going to happen to jobs, fear of what is going to happen to the family, to the children, to the future of the children. And within all these fears, the central part of the what should I say, the person who is most involved is the woman in the house, because she is the one who has to make ends meet. She is the one who has to bring up the children. She has to manage the household, the husband, the children, the marketing, the shopping, everything. So this fear is something which has gained a lot of intensity during these recent times. But if we talk about what is fear, I think first we should be able to define what is fear. So fear is a kind of holistic reaction which is there to a real or to an imagined threat. This threat could be a situation, it could be an object, or it could be a person. And it involves both psychological and physiological changes in the body. So the physiological changes become manifest very soon. It is the psychological part which becomes bothering maybe months later, not immediately. So this fear which has prevailed, it has led to a lot of problems for people physically and emotionally and mentally. As far as the type of fear is concerned, we can have the learned fears and we can have the natural fears. We can categorize them into these two types. Natural fears are those which would not require a social setup or a social context. They are there by virtue of our inheritance, of our genetic makeup. So any loud sound, very bright light, darkness, if there is a sudden change of surrounding, of height, of new people, you are going to meet new people, or there is a movement that is sudden, it is unstable, all these things give rise to fear. And this is not something which is going to be uh, making much problem, because once you become used to that kind of situation, then you can overcome these fears. As far as learned fears are concerned, these are because of some child rearing practices, because of the socialization, because of the surroundings, the social norms. So the kind of fears that we learn are imposed, or we are conditioned to be afraid of things which would normally not be fearful. So it could be like going with strangers. That is something which we are taught. Don't go with a stranger. Stay at home. If there is somebody you don't know, don't talk to that person. He might be dangerous. He might be wanting to kidnap you. And in that same kind of continuity, then staying alone, don't go out alone, go with someone. If you are alone, then you can be a target for assault, or some kind of mishap. And so women, when we come to the topic of women and girls, teenagers, then having good looks becomes something which is endorsed by the society, by the organizations, by the market. Everything in society, even these days, is emphasizing the importance of good looks. So this market economy is what is endorsing the fear also of losing good looks. So if you are ill, if something happens, if you are the object of an attack, if you don't take care of your looks, then you will not succeed. So good looks for girls, for women has become a kind of brand quality that if you have these looks, then you will succeed. If you don't have the looks, you will be left behind. So that is a fear that is rampant among the younger generation also, and those who are in competitive situations, even to the extent that the cosmetic industry is endorsing these assumptions that if you have good looks, then you will succeed. If you don't have good looks, you will be left behind. Then, more specific to the woman, to the female population, and it is there in nearly all societies, is the fear that the woman might not have a child. The childlessness fear is there. If the woman, if a girl who gets married is not able to conceive, is not able to have a child, then she is going to be the object of derision, of criticism, of so many other negative emotions. So this fear of childlessness is there in women. Even the fact that women become mothers is producing fear these days, because there are so many responsibilities attached to the fact that if you are a mother, you will have to do all these things if you want to be considered a good mother. So these are some of the reactions to situations of society or surroundings that women might learn to be afraid of, because they are being enforced by the social norms, by family, by elders. Now, if we think of the different age groups, so just now I just talked about the learned fears and the natural fears. But if you look across the different age groups, then the things which scare you in your childhood might not scare you later on. So fears of childhood are different, and for the girl child, uh, being taught to be afraid is something that is, I think, common across different societies. So why as women we are always scared? Because in our childhood we have been taught that boys are okay, they don't have to be afraid, but the girl has to be afraid. And afraid of what? That is the thing that is subject to the different societies of which you are a part. When the girl becomes a teenager, then the teenager is again taught to be scared, to be afraid of bodily changes, afraid of not having good looks, afraid of not having the proper body image. And now, even now, along with all these aspects, the girls are being told that you have to achieve. So if you are not achieving, then you are no use. So the girls would be afraid that they will not be able to achieve. I think that is a very big reason why there are so many suicides that are happening. Girls in so many, even the film industry, you have seen there are so many suicides. Young actresses who are committing suicide, which was not there earlier. Yes, we had older actresses who thought they now no longer have their look, so it's no use living, and they kind of lost their mental balance. Some of them committed suicide, but recently you can see the spurt in the suicides that are happening among the younger generation, and some of them are hardly more than 18. That is hardly the age at which a person should get disillusioned by the fact that he or she does not have the appropriate looks. So teenagers are, of course, the subject, are the object of a lot of biases and lot of fears also they develop because of all these things. Then we come to the young adulthood, young adults, and since we are talking mainly about girls and young women, so as young women, even those in the audience who might be listening, they would realize that at a certain age, you forget the fears of your teenage and the childhood, but you develop new kinds of fears. And these fears are related more to the real time world, the kind of society you have to face, the kind of places you have to stay or work. Workplace fears begin because you are there among strangers, and you have been taught that you should not be um, too familiar with strangers. So anybody at the workplace, when you join, is a new person. And initially, there is a certain hesitancy, a reaction to becoming or feeling easy at the workplace. So it takes some time for the young adults to, young women to adapt to new workplaces, or if the girl gets married, then trusting the people whom you find in the new family, that is not very easy. So many instances that are highlighted in the newspapers, in the news, about dowry cases, about domestic violence, all these things, they have become a kind of put off for girls, for young women. And they might not actually be responsible for leading to any mental disorder, but as far as well-being is concerned, it does have a negative impact on the well-being. Later on, if you go to the middle age level, then middle-aged women, they are having a different kind of problem, and the fears are more related to the fact that children are growing up, the finances are tight, husbands might be not very attentive, not very cooperative, children are not behaving the way they should. So, this kind of a situation can lead to a fear that the person is not having or feeling that kind of self worth, the worth that the person should be given by the family, by the society. And this fear of being used becomes very prevalent. If you talk to women at that age level, most of them would not be saying anything positive about themselves. It's more about their situation, that this is the way life is, this is the way you have to live it. If you don't, then you can't survive. So there's a kind of resignation, of acceptance. Then, of course, the body also undergoes changes. There are hormonal changes. So those kind of problems are there. So overall, the kind of well-being that women should feel at this age is missing. And being working or being in the workplace myself, I have frequent discussions with other colleagues, and it becomes very apparent that even though we might be achieving what we set out to achieve, the feeling of self-worth and the feeling that we have done a commendable job is missing. Maybe there is more of a fear that people are not considering us worth that effort. So these fears of middle age become very difficult to manage also, and they do lead to a reduction in psychological well-being. And as of now, if you consider the situation that corona has produced, then old age fears have escalated, and they have escalated to dimensions that were till now not even imagined. So the fear of being left alone to die, the fear of being left alone to manage an illness, the fear that the spouse might not live, or maybe might not be in that condition to help the wife when she is old. All these fears are there, and the fears that children might not cooperate, children are having their own lives, they would not welcome a person who is kind of burden on them, financial burden, even if not financial burden, an emotional, psychological burden, because it requires a lot of adaptation when the elderly person is also a kind of educated, self-determined person, and the children and their children are of the uh, educated category. So there is a clash of wills also. Who should have the upper hand, the seniors or the juniors or the children? So these old age fears are becoming even more um, significant, and for women, they have become maybe more than for men, because as my observation shows, generally it is the older women who outlive their husbands. Of course, that is just an observation. I don't have any statistical research for that, but so, what I find around me, I realize that it is the ladies who are outliving the men. Maybe it's because of their physical strength that they are outliving the men, or maybe they are emotionally more um, not so upset about things. They've gone through so many problems and so many ups and downs that probably they become stoical at that age and nothing disturbs them that much. But yes, it is a problem for women to live. Again, here the live alone factor becomes important. How you will live alone. And if the children are not supportive, then how you are going to live alone. So all these kind of fears, there are so many which I might not have discussed, I have not observed also, maybe I'm not aware of, but these are some of the things which bother me. So I felt I should share it with um, you all at a platform where maybe what I say might make sense to somebody. Now, globally also, if we don't have the same kind of societies all over the world, but globally also the women are at the receiving end most of the time. And this lack of security, physical security, this fear of um, being assaulted, being raped, being, privacy, right to my body not being uh, honored. You can see so many, read so many things in the news where women don't have the right to for abortion. They are fighting for that, and how to terminate pregnancy. All these things are creating a problem for women, and this creates a kind of fear among so many other women also. You might not be actually belonging to that kind of society or that group, but it does disturb you. Body image, sexual harassment, all these things are common all over the world. Workplace harassment is there worldwide, and even though there are laws and there are strict rules, but this happens all over the world. In public places, there is molestation that is there, and all these. things apart, the fact that aging is a problem for women in all societies, then there is something that we need to think about, why this fear is being perpetuated. Because most societies have this vision of who is an ideal woman. आइडियल मैन तो नहीं कहा जाता है, बट आइडियल वुमन जरूर कहा जाता है. एंड आइडियल वुमन इज सपोज टू बी मल्टी फैसेटेड, मल्टी स्किल्ड, मल्टी टास्किंग, एवरीथिंग हैज टू बी आइडियल. सो दिस fear is endorsed by the fact that most women would like to live up to this ideal, but they find themselves unable to do that. And if they are unable to do that, then it creates mental problems for them. Now, here I have tried to relate it with the current happenings which disturbed me as a person. And it should, I think, disturb a lot of people around. The case of, even though this is maybe a political kind of a situation in a country like Afghanistan, but so many girls, so many women who were brought up in a different way since the US took over, especially in this century, 21st century, those who were born, they lived in a free society and they were not aware of the earlier kind of setup where women were behind the parda and what they call, the mask and all that, full body cover. These women were going around like normal girls, normal women, working in places, high-ranking officials. So many of them, really, country can't run without having women working. And what happened recently has disturbed a lot of people all over the world, because women are now told that you are just supposed to give birth and bring up new Afghanis. So that is regressive and barbaric also, where women are killed, they are exploited sexually, they are made to stay inside their homes, they can't stir out, they can't protest, their voice is not heard. How can you think that there will be well-being, psychological well-being? As a psychologist, it is good to say that we should concentrate on the positive aspects. We should concentrate on well-being rather than on the negative aspect of situations. But within this situation, I find it terrifying. And if I think of our society, I think it would be a disaster if something like this ever happened. Because everywhere we have women working, everywhere we have women who are educated, they are there in the top post, they are there in the lower cadre, they are there at the labor level, they are there at any place you name it, and you have women working. So if you think of a whole society being overturned like this, where women are now told to stay at home, don't venture out, don't show your body should not be seen, no part of your body should be seen, it is very disturbing. And it does impact on the well-being of women all over the world, because creates a kind of fear that this could happen anywhere. And it is better that we should take care that this doesn't happen in our society. So then other societies also during this pandemic, they have kind of tried to subjugate women. Even in China, Chinese women, you find them working everywhere. But I read somewhere, maybe it's not all that important, but it was a news snippet which said that Chinese women have been told not to stay single, take time off from work, and find a partner for themselves and get married. So should the society, should the male political setup dictate what a woman should do in her life or not do? So that becomes a question, and it does impact on the well-being. In Japan also, women are not very liberated or allowed to be work liberally. And during the pandemic, there was a news that said that Japanese government has told, I think it was the government or maybe some agency, who told the women during the pandemic to use a lot of makeup and look pretty so that their husbands are happy working at home. That is something that is questionable, and it does impact on the psychological well-being of women. And Indian women, of course, in this Asian society, we have a lot of different reasons to be afraid of, and it is impossible to name them. But at workplaces, at home, outside, during the darkness when it comes, if you are working at late night, or you're working late night, then going back to so much, so many reasons that women are afraid of. And does it help in making the women feel good about themselves, or does it impact their well-being negatively? So I'm just raising questions, not providing answers, just raising questions which need to be thought of. So, and in fact, the recent statement by a minister somewhere that women's mental health is not up to the mark because the modern woman has become too modernized, too has too much of a broadened outlook. So that should it be? Should that be the attitude? It does provide a kind of doubt in your mind that जो हम कर रहे हैं वो सही है, या जो हम नहीं कर रहे हैं, या जो हम नहीं सोच रहे हैं वो ज्यादा सही है. So it is a male definition of women's role in society, and that makes women afraid of doing things which their society doesn't approve. So working women, because I am there with working women and having interactions with them, so we really feel that even at the workplace, we are not without fear, not of our work. We are competent enough to do our work. We are confident. But when it comes to the fact that we will be accepted in that manner, we will get the credit, or we will be able to break the glass ceiling, that is something which is doubtful. And if you look at the reasons for these psychological fears, then if you are achievement oriented, then there is a fear that you might not be able to achieve. If there is a matter of resources, who gets more resources, then there is a fear you might not get the available resources. Even within the family, it is possible that there is discrimination. Hopefully, the urban families are now concentrating on the girl child as much as on the male child. But in other sections of society, in the rural areas, we find that there is discrimination. And for working women, the impact is on the workload also, how much you can manage efficiently and comfortably. So that creates a kind of doubt and a fear that you might not be able to come up to the mark. Coming up to the mark, achieving the image of an ideal woman, having an ideal body, ideal everything is not possible. And these are things which should be discussed, maybe not with, if not with men, but between women and among girls at schools. These should be discussed. The point why I have taken this topic of fear is because if women want to do something, they have to overcome this fear. this is not a pathological fear. This is not phobia. This is a normal kind of fear, but which is prevailing all through your life. Each and every part of your activity, your existence, your involvement, your roles, they should be free of fear, at least to the extent that you don't feel afraid of stepping out, don't feel afraid of going into the difficult situations. And of course, COVID-19 should also be discussed क्योंकि इसके साथ जो pandemic के साथ जो traumas आए हैं वो बहुत ही fearful हुए हैं, and lots of people in this country have lost someone in the family, especially the last wave. The second wave took away a number of young people who fell ill. Parents lost their children, the children lost their parents, and children have been orphaned. The women have been left without a bread earner. So many things which have created problems, and the fear is there of job loss. So even if there is exploitation, having a job is more than protesting against the exploitation. If you are having reduced income, having that much income at least is better than having no income. So lot of uncertainties that are creating fear, and of course men are as much susceptible to this kind of fear as women. I'm not saying that men don't feel the stress, they don't feel the uncertainty, and they are not afraid. They are afraid, but they have better coping mechanisms available for them, and women might not have access to these kind of coping strategies. So in the end, it impacts their psychological well-being more than what it does to men. Because once you are out there in the field, you tend to forget that you are suffering from the particular kind of loss. But if you are at home and if you are only having to survive and sustain with what is available, then that is a situation which the woman is facing day and night and not able to come out of it. So that is creating a kind of fearful existence for the woman, not knowing what the future is going to bring. So post-COVID stress is there both in men and women, but for women there are different reasons. For men there may be different reasons. And since 50, as you just said, 50% of the society is comprised of women. So if you don't have the proper mechanisms in place to help these women who are suffering and who are afraid of the future, who are not able to cope with their lives, then you have 50%, if not 50%, at least 30% of the population that is mentally unwell. So it might not be mental illness as such, but the fact that they are not able to perform the way they can if they were helped out, that matters. So anxiety, stress, reduced performance, and reduction in efficiency at the workplace, at home, all these things are leading to distress, and this distress is related to the mental problems like depression and all these panic attacks, anxiety attacks, all these things. And they are there because of the illness. Also, they are there because of the physical part of the outcome that has followed the illness, and also because of the psychological reasons. So we have to concentrate on the well-being of women separately and not in the same way as we talk of psychological well-being of men. And here we come to gendered perceptions of what constitutes well-being. So if we apply the same markers for both men and women, then we are going to run into problems, because you can't have the same prescription for a woman who is having an illness and for a man who is having an illness. The body reacts differently, the mind reacts differently. So ये जेंडर परसेप्शंस जो हैं कि मॉडर्न वुमन जो है वो बहुत ज्यादा मॉडर्न हो गई है एंड they prefer to remain single, and if they don't they get married, they don't want to have children. What does it indicate? It indicates that women are scared of getting married. Like, women are scared of having a family. Why? This is something that needs to be investigated. And even though there is an outrage that any man should say such a thing, I think this is a topic for investigation. कि ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? अगर if men feel that this is not the way things should be, then maybe they are responsible, and some steps should be taken to make them understand why women are not opting for marriage and why they are not wanting family. It doesn't mean that they are going to have a poor mental health.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they are not married. So I think if I'm exceeding the time, then please tell me. But certain suggestions I had outlined
ma'am,
for
so-
dealing with fears. And am I running out of time? Is it?
No, ma'am, we are perfectly on the time. We have few questions for you. Our audience have asked. So the first question is, as you mentioned, that social media या जो celebrities हैं उनके वो जो है वो unexpected beauty standards जो हैं वो show करते हैं. So उस वजह से जो है जो young female population है या in general female population है उनके लिए एक वो हो जा उनके लिए एक वो स्टैंडर्ड एक एक्सपेक्टेशन हो जाती है कि दिस इज हाउ वी शुड लुक. सो हाउ दिस प्रॉब्लम और हाउ दीज ब्यूटी स्टैंडर्ड्स affect the women psychologically?
Yeah, they are affecting the women psychologically, and the younger girls, especially the girls who are growing up into young women, उनके aspirations, उनके जो anticipations हैं from the future, they are not in touch with reality. और reality is very different. आप चाहे जितना भी अपने looks पे concentrate कर लीजिए, but in the end it is your capabilities and your talents also which matter. So maybe the fact is that girls are not being given the proper training and not being given the proper advice about how to go about such jobs. Because the fashion industry is a very big industry now, and so many women are involved. But why this has been having a negative impact on psychological well-being? Maybe it's because these women who are aspiring to be models, who are aspiring to be actresses, they have not been given the proper information about what their job means. And if you go into any job, any other job, I think the first thing you do is find out what your job means. आपको उस जॉब में करना क्या है? और जब आप कभी-कभी किसी जॉब को आप छोड़ देते हो या नहीं आप करते हो इसलिए क्योंकि आपको पता है कि आप उस तरह का काम नहीं कर सकते हो. तो इसी तरह से I think there should be some kind of transparency, some kind of information that should be provided on the same lines that it is for the other jobs. What their job is going to mean, and if that job is going to mean something that they are not adept at, not capable of doing, then they would be able to. But they could, the counselors, of course, counseling तो बहुत आजकल जरूरी हो गई है, स्कूल में बहुत जरूरी है. काउंसलर्स को भी इस चीज को टेकअप करना चाहिए कि जो schools में लड़कियां जा रही हैं, and I know because in my own family I have seen the younger girls, new generation, they go for coaching, तो पूरा मेकअप करके और अच्छे से जाती हैं. Of course they look cute, but their expectation of or their perception of what is expected from them, that is out of touch with reality. They are going to get enter into competitive exams, but this is not going to help them in any way. तो ये जो एक डाइकोटमी है, ये एक डिस्क्रिपेंसी है, इस चीज को काउंसलर्स को भी टेकअप करना चाहिए, एंड गर्ल्स को एजुकेट करना पड़ेगा बोथ वेज उनके जॉब जिसके चाहते हैं, एस्पायर कर रही हैं, उसमें एक्टिविटीज जो है, आर दे actually going to be able to cope with those activities? So younger generation needs, they have access to lots of information, but maybe not to the right kind of information. And that is what schools and counselors and psychologists need to do, and bring them up into touch with reality, जो real situation है,
Yes, ma'am.
उसकी information दो. तो ये एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है, क्योंकि हम
Yes.
जब स्कूल्स के काउंसलिंग की बात करते हैं तो करियर काउंसलिंग है और इंटरेस्ट हैं और ये सब बातें करते हैं, बट इस बारे में बात नहीं करते कि जो लड़कियां अपने लुक्स को यूज करना चाह रही हैं फॉर देयर फ्यूचर, व्हाट इट वुड मीन लेटर ऑन. So this needs to be given as much legitimacy as any other profession. And fashion industry, acting industry, these have
Yeah, ma'am.
become.
So we have next question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, the next question is, you talked about coping strategies.
About
So what could be a women coping strategy should be to overcome fear
So I was about
for
to
psychological well-being?
talk about that, but I think I ran out of time. But coping strategies जो है वो बहुत जरूरी है कि किस तरह डेवलप की जाए, और अगर आप साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं तो आप जानते होंगे कि नीड फॉर अचीवमेंट जो है, इट इज हैविंग टू एस्पेक्ट्स, फियर ऑफ फेलियर एंड डिजायर फॉर सक्सेस. तो फियर ऑफ फेलियर जो है, ये अगर विमेन में ज्यादा है तो उनका जो नीड है अचीवमेंट का वो पीछे रह जाता है और फेलियर का फियर ज्यादा हो जाता है. सो आई थिंक दिस इज वन वे इन विच गर्ल्स कैन बी help to cope by increasing or encouraging them to think of success rather than of failure. लड़कियों से क्या कहा जाता है, वो काम मत करो, तुम नहीं कर पाओगी, वो तुम्हारे बस का नहीं है. So that kind of advice or admonition that creates fear. Now fear of failure अगर खत्म हो जाए तो फिर सक्सेस की ही बात लड़कियां सोचेंगी कि हम कैसे सक्सेसफुल हो सकते हैं और हम क्या क्या कर सकते हैं. तो ये एक एक्शन ओरिएंटेड अप्रोच है, और जो रिस्क टेकिंग बिहेवियर है उसको भी एनकरेज करना जरूरी है. लड़कियों को सेफ जोन्स में केवल जाना जरूरी नहीं है. एंड यू नो नाउ गर्ल्स आर स्टेपिंग इनटू सो मेनी डिफिकल्ट जॉब्स, इवन स्पेस एंड सो मेनी अदर थिंग, मेडिकल और सब कुछ में जा रही हैं जिसमें कि रिस्क है. लेकिन अगर उसको एक चैलेंज की तरह ले रादर देन समथिंग टू बी अफ्रेड ऑफ, तो ये भी सिखाना जरूरी है कि रिस्क जो है दैट इज अ चैलेंज एंड नॉट समथिंग दैट हैज टू बी अवॉइडेड. एंड इट इज फॉर द फैमिली आल्सो टू हेल्प आउट कि हाँ, अगर लड़की रिस्क ले रही है तो उसको हेल्प करें रादर देन डिस्करेज हर कि नहीं तुम्हारे साथ ये हो जाएगा, तुम्हारे साथ वो हो जाएगा, एंड मेक द गर्ल इवन मोर अफ्रेड. So once the girl learns to be fearless, then obviously she will also look at things in an objective manner. ऐसा थोड़ी है कि लड़की जो है वो fearless हो जाएगी तो कहीं भी चली जाएगी. She is still having her own perceptions and her own estimations of how far she should go. Then at the workplace there is this strategy for women empowerment that has to be put into practice. सिर्फ policies और rules से नहीं होता है कि आप women के लिए करें. आप उनको decisions लेने की जिम्मेदारियां दें, उनको आप ऐसी positions पर appoint करें जहां पर कि उनको अपने decisions implement करने का मौका मिले, and they learn to work independently. And one strategy which I think is very useful in every sphere of life is management by objectives. ये एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल स्ट्रेटेजी है, जिन्होंने ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल या मैनेजमेंट के बारे में पढ़ा होगा कि एक लिमिटेड टाइम पीरियड के लिए आप कुछ छोटे छोटे गोल सेट करते हैं जो कि अल्टीमेटली दे लीड टू द लार्जर गोल. इंस्टेड ऑफ जस्ट एम्फसाइजिंग दैट यू हैव टू बिकम दिस, you have to be you have to help the person to, or help the girl or the woman to set realistic goals within short period of times, outline the activities which she can do to achieve those those short term goals. और वो धीमे धीमे जब वो सारे गोल्स अचीव करती जाएगी तो उसका कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ेगा और वो अपने आप ही लार्जर गोल की तरफ बढ़ेगी. And that is going to take care of the fear part also, because once she knows that she is succeeding, that fear becomes secondary. इसके लिए फिर जैसे मैंने कहा कि आपको फैमिली सपोर्ट चाहिए, स्कूल से सपोर्ट चाहिए और सोसाइटी में सपोर्ट चाहिए। सबसे ज्यादा तो स्कूल्स में सपोर्ट चाहिए। तो गर्ल्स के लिए तो स्कूल्स भी बहुत डेंजर जोन होते चले जा रहे हैं, तो फिजिकल सिक्योरिटी भी चाहिए, वर्क प्लेसेस में चाहिए, फिर फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग जो आजकल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, जूडो, कराटे, ऑल दीज थिंग्स, सो दैट द गर्ल बिकम्स assured that she is able to cope with lawless elements or people who indulge in objectionable behavior. विक्टिम को विक्टिमाइज करना छोड़ दीजिए। जो ऑलरेडी विक्टिम है उसकी जो प्राइवेसी है, उसकी जो ट्रॉमा है, उसको वो करिए, एड्रेस करिए, रादर देन ऑफ क्वेश्चनिंग द विक्टिम कि ऐसा हुआ था, क्या हुआ था, क्यों हुआ था, क्या कपड़े पहने थी, ऑल दीज थिंग्स, these are not a very nice
Yes,
example of how you can enable victims to rehabilitate, क्योंकि विक्टिम जो है उसको तो रिहेबिलिटेशन चाहिए, उसको विक्टिमाइज करने से तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं सॉल्व होगी। और सबसे ज्यादा जो आजकल हमको लगता है कि आप लोग भी समझेंगे, सोशल मीडिया सपोर्ट बहुत जरूरी है। और सोशल मीडिया इतना इम्पोर्टेंट हो गया है कि वहां पर आप बहुत लोगों से रीच आउट कर सकते हो। और यू हैव विमेन्स फोरम्स, यू हैव सोशल सपोर्ट ग्रुप्स। उसी में एक ये मी टू मूवमेंट था which gained lot of credibility and popularity, and people were women were able to voice their feelings and their experiences, and some people were punished on the basis of that. So all these things are going to help the women in coping with the fears and the fact that they would like to live normal lives and feel good about themselves. Ultimately, हमको लगता है कि as women, we are not trying to outdo the men. We are trying to have a life which is going to increase our own worth in our own eyes, and maybe help us to do something productive in society and help other people also to do something which is going to be uh, going to help
yes,
them to be
ma'am. That
successful.
was a very
तो
beautiful
ये
thought.
अगर है तो it is going to increase the well-being of the women also, and take care of the fears also. I think I'll wind up over here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now we have the last question for the session. So आपने मेंशन किया था कि काफ़ी वुमेन को फियर होता है, तो इस वजह से हमारी बॉडी जो है वो फ्लाइट एंड फाइट मोड पे रहती है। एंड एज वी ऑल नो, व्हेन आवर CNS, सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम, इज इन द फाइट एंड फ्लाइट मोड, सो मतलब वो फिजिकली एज वेल एज मेंटली काफ़ी एग्जॉस्टिंग होता है। सो हाउ कैन वी चेंज दैट? लाइक again, this is a very debatable question, that how can we make women feel safe, but we have to ask it here that because of this flight and fight mode, how can we change that?
See, this is something जो flight and fight mode है, ये एक पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशन में हो सकता है कि आपको ऐसा लगे कि आप भाग जाएं, और आपकी पूरी बॉडी जो है आपको कर रही है कि आप भाग जाएं। और हो सकता है कि भागना भी एक अच्छे वो है, स्ट्रैटेजी है। कभी कभी भाग जाने से भी सेफ्टी हो जाती है, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि भाग जाना इज द सॉल्यूशन। तो ये आप अगर गर्ल्स हैं उनको समझना है कि कैसे वो cope करेंगी with difficult situations, with unsafe situations. तो हर समय भागना is not the solution. Sometimes you have to confront the situation, confront the person, and then you realize that the person is not all that strong and all that perverted also. हो सकता है उसको भी एक मोमेंटरी वो है, इच्छा है, लेकिन वो अगर आप उसको कन्फ्रंट करें तो वो भाग जाता है। And these are things which girls can, it's the same as with phobias, you know. phobia में क्या होता है, आप अपने fear की वजह से भाग जाते हो, आप उस situation में जाते ही नहीं हो जिसमें कि आप अगर जाओ तो आपको पता चले कि ऐसा कुछ है ही नहीं डरने का। पर वो सोच के ही आप भाग जाते हो। आपको हाइट से डर है, तो इसलिए आप ऊंची जगह जाते ही नहीं हो डर के मारे कि हमें हाइट से डर लगता है। तो ये जो फ्लाइट मोड है, इसको काउंटर करना अपनी विल पावर से ही हो सकता है। एंड ऑफ कोर्स जो आजकल बहुत सारे जो ये फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग जो दी जा रही है लड़कियों को, दैट वुड हेल्प देम आउट, बट इट इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन द काइंड ऑफ सोसाइटी एंड द काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन दैट द गर्ल्स आर इन। क्योंकि कुछ जॉब्स हैं जिनमें, जैसे पुलिस जॉब्स हैं, पुलिस जॉब्स में जो है फ्लाइट तो नहीं पॉसिबल है। अगर कुछ कोई क्रिमिनल को करना है हैंडल, तो आपको अप्रोच ही करना है उसमें, आप उससे भाग तो नहीं सकते हो। और आप पाएंगे कि women police are as much object of all these crimes। तो ये चीज जो है थोड़ी सी सब्जेक्टिव भी है, और कुछ सोसाइटी के हाथ में भी है कि कैसे वो, if the police is there to support protect you and women police are there to protect you, and then you need police to protect women police, तो फिर women police का फायदा ही क्या हुआ? फिर तो
Yes,
आप
ma'am.
कुछ कर ही नहीं सकते हो, किसी को भी नहीं प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते हो। तो ये जो कंडीशनिंग है, इसको ओवरकम करना भी जरूरी है कि जब आपको इतनी ट्रेनिंग दी गई है, आप पुलिस हो और आप वहां हो सोसाइटी में जहां पर आपको दूसरों को प्रोटेक्शन देना है, वहां आप नहीं प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते अपने को, तो ये तो एक बहुत ही या तो ट्रेनिंग ठीक नहीं दी गई है, या आपको मेंटली नहीं प्रिपेयर किया गया है। तो ऐसी चीजें हैं जिसको कि आप एक जनरलाइज्ड आंसर नहीं दे सकते हैं। बट yes, this tendency to run away, to take flight as soon as you are approached by a difficult situation or somebody is terrifying you, that has to be countered by the girls themselves, by the women themselves। और जब वो काउंटर करेंगी तो देखेंगी कि उतना भी नहीं स्केरी है जितना कि वो सोचती हैं। हाँ, कुछ परवर्ट्स हैं सोसाइटी में, कुछ क्रिमिनल्स हैं जिनको कि जिनसे कि आप बच जाए तो ही अच्छा है। तो it is both ways।
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
That is all I can say। Yeah, so I think we have come to the end of this session, and I hope I have said something that is you are able to relate with as women, even though it was not a like session on any clinical aspect of mental health, बट साइकोलॉजिकल वेलबींग जो जनरल पॉपुलेशन है, जो नॉर्मल पॉपुलेशन है, उसके लिए बहुत जरूरी है, और उस पर फोकस करना भी उतना ही जरूरी है फॉर साइकोलॉजिस्ट एज इट इज टू गिव साइकोलॉजिकल हेल्प टू पीपल हु आर सफरिंग फ्रॉम मेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स। तो shall we wrap up this session now, or any other question?
Yes, ma'am. We should wrap. We are just wrapping up. So,
Okay.
On behalf of Psychologs, we would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude towards our speaker, Dr. Manisha Agarwal, for enlightening us with her outstanding knowledge and experience. Ma'am, today you have helped us expand our mindset, and it was really an interactive session with you.
now we would like to extend our gratitude towards Psychologs magazine for providing us this unique platform to enlighten us with this experience. And special thanks to my co-host Adiba and to the entire team of Psychologs for their extraordinary efforts, without which this wasn't be able to help possible. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, audience, for your interactive questions. Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you.